Hello friends, welcome back. Let's begin with our learning of macroeconomics, and after completing the playlist of national income and money and banking now we are to begin with the next unit that's called the determination of income and employment. It would further be divided into three subparts, and the first is the basic concepts of AD and AS. On demand and feedback of my students, which I've received after these videos, we are now changing the format of teaching. Here we'll have some background with written content so that we need less of the time for writing and more time would be given for the elaboration, and hence more coverage would happen in one video lecture. So let's begin. When we talk about AD, A stands for aggregate and D stands for demand. I just want you to go back to your previous learning of microeconomics where demand curve would always slope down. Why so? Because it was made with respect to price here, right? And as per the law of demand, the price and quantity showed the inverse relationship, hence it had a negative slope. Now, in this very chapter, the whole unit, chapter 7, chapter 8, and chapter 9, the whole unit would have all the diagrams made wherein we would have income on the x-axis. Right. So if we are making AD or AS or any component of AD or AS on vertical axis, we would always have AD and AS sloping upwards. Why so? Because with income rise, the demand tends to rise. So it's very much clearly given here that AD can be measured with respect to general price level. That's one elaboration, and the second elaboration is with respect to level of income. But our syllabus of 12th standard wants AD to be used and found and discussed with respect to income. So we would not have anywhere in this chapter any demand curve which slopes downwards. We would have all the diagrams having the slope with a positive slope, means rising upward. So let's come back on the definition of AD. A is aggregate. Aggregate means total or gross, right? So total means of all the goods and services, and demand means, and that too from all the sectors of the economy. Demand means the whole demand of a commodity which all the consumers of the economy tend to buy. Right. So, and it's always measured for a period of one accounting year. So, if we just take all these pointers together, right? AD is here talked to be the total physical quantities. It's not the total physical quantity. It's again a very important point discussed in class 10th as well, that why national income is expressed in terms of money when it's a matter of production of goods and services, and goods and services are produced in liter, meter, kilogram, kiloliter. So if we are making the clothes, it's in meter. When we are doing the production of milk or oil or something, right, so this is in liter. So how do we get to know what's the value of the total goods and services produced? So because of these different things, we need to monetize all of them together, and hence the national income is expressed in one common unit, that is price, that is in terms of money. So AD is never expressed, not expressed in terms of physical quantities. It's always expressed in terms of the total expenditure which is intended to happen in the economy. So this intention is made clear in the next topic, in the next pointer, that AD is always expressed as the wish to spend or what people plan to spend. Mind you, whenever we are talking about AD in chapter number 7 and 8, we are always talking about AD as ex ante concept, and you would be given the detail, means whatever is planned or proposed, right, or wished, which is not actual. So AD everywhere is ex ante. You would have a better knowledge when this topic comes later. So when we club all these points which are discussed together, we are able to now frame the definition of AD, and that is just a one marker definition so far, but it has given us a clear idea. What is it? AD is the sum total of the expenditure that people plan to incur. Here it's clearly made plan to incur. Where? On the purchase of all the goods and services. And when I say all the goods and services, from all the sectors, all three sectors of the economy, produced in the economy with respect to one accounting year. So please stay informed that you have to give all these keywords to define AD, else you may lose half a mark or even out of 1 mark if you're missing on any of these important pointer. So let's now go ahead with the details of AD. What is AD? How does it behave? Aggregate demand. Aggregate demand would always have a positive relation when it comes to Y. And what is Y in economics? It's income. You see, income is shown to be rising 0, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So AD or planned expenditure is expected to rise. So you would see a positive value, 30, 35, 40, 45, 40, 50, 55. It's a rise. But the most important point to note here is at zero level of income, we have a positive value of AD. So the crux of this discussion is AD is never zero, irrespective of any level of income. Means even if there is no income earned in the economy, there is some or the other demand that is for the bare minimum survival. You would have this clearly explained when we talk about the concept of C, means consumption curve, later. And what is C? C is a component of AD, right? Did you know this box clearly tells that even when y is equal to 0, we would never have AD as 0. So this is one important point. So the observations from this relationship are one, that it would never be 0. There is always a minimum level of expenditure. And second is AD always increases with an increase in income. So it is positively related. And yes, when you're talking about AD and income, there comes a time when AD surpasses income. When a consistent rise in income happens, the demand then falls short of income. Then we have C. At this level, initially 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. So if we just keep on, though in this very table it's not visible, but later on you would see that AD surpasses income also. And this is it. It says after a certain level of Y is reached, AD lags behind income. AD initially is more and later on it becomes less and income surpasses. I'm sorry, I used it otherwise. Income surpasses AD. Now, AD curve is shown here as C plus I components. Right. But I think I'm keeping this on hold just for a while because we will get back to it for its breakup because we are yet not sure about what is AD as of now. So let's talk about the theoretical aspect of AD. And then once we are well aware of AD, we'll get back to this pictorial presentation once again for the better clarity. Right. I'll get back to this very elaboration once again. First, let's talk about what all are the components of AD. So, when we say AD, and we say it's the expected expenditure which happens in the economy. I'll use all this explanation also, but I want you to be with me for the expenditure method which we have used in national income. If you're able to recall, GDP MP was the income aggregate which we would get from national income expenditure method, and it had the components of private final consumption expenditure, government final consumption expenditure, gross domestic capital formation, and net exports. Right. And here it says they have to club all the expenses together. Actually, this becomes the base, and AD, the total demand here, is showcased as the private final consumption expenditure is nothing but the demand for consumption. Government final consumption expenditure is nothing but the demand as put up by the government sector. Gross domestic capital formation is for the investment. So demand for the investment purposes. And net expenditure is exports minus imports. So net exports is there, right? But your syllabus wants you to restrict for a closed economy. So what do you mean by the term closed economy? Closed economy means which does not have the external world with it. So NE, this gets cancelled out. So now this AD is equal to C plus G plus I is an expression for three sector model. And when I say three sector model, we have the households, the firms, as well as the government sector involved in it. But our syllabus also wants us to limit this discussion on two sectors. So we have to just cross this government sector as well. So how do we get, and what is the left out segment? Now AD is equal to C plus I. And this is the equality which we are going to use all throughout in all the diagrams of this very unit. AD is equal to C plus I. So see, this C plus I is the AD for closed economy. And as I told you, if we just move ahead, if we want to see that a third sector is also there, so G is added up, the government expenditure. And if we want to go for the open economy, this is exports minus imports or net exports. So, but our syllabus is restricted to two sector model. So we would have AD is equal to C plus I. Now that we understand AD is the sum total of C and I, I'll take you back to this elaboration, this diagram which I kept on hold, that this is AD. AD is equal to C plus I. Now, wherein we have C as an upward sloping diagram, and I is a constant value. For the sake of simplicity, we have taken it to be a constant straight line for the whole chapter. And when we club these two, so this constant value of I is added over and above this. So this is C, and if we add this much of I above it, and it's a constant value, so this becomes AD, and we write it as C plus I. I hope now you would be able to understand these two diagrams. I is the parallel line parallel to x-axis. C would be here going this way. So this is C, this is I, and when we club C and I together means I is added over and above C. So it becomes a line parallel to the C curve, and hence this is the AD curve. And if you just make it separately, AD looks like this, right? And now if we talk about some observations of AD, how AD behaves, AD has a positive slope with respect to income. AD is a positive value even at zero level of income. And we have it, compared with AS. We would be talking about AS also. So AD is talked about in these three stages. When AD is greater than AS, when AD is equal to AS, and when AD is lesser than AS. AS is nothing but aggregate supply. Aggregate supply is the level of income. I'll tell you in the following pages. So this is AD, and now we have got to know that AD is made up of C and I when it comes to a closed economy, which is required to be understood by us. Now let's talk about the concept of AS, aggregate supply. I want all of you to be back again on the basic concept of the circular model of national income, that production leads to income generation and income leads to expenditure, and hence this is how the money keeps on moving in a circle. And here the biggest assumption was whatever is produced in the economy, the same level of incomes will be generated in the economy and the same level of expenditure would happen in the economy. So what is aggregate supply? It's nothing but the total production, aggregate production at any point of time, right? And production has to be just equal to income. That's why we find AD and AS. Now we are talking about AS. AS is said to be a 45-degree line, a line of reference, right, which is equidistant from the x-axis and y-axis always. Why do we call it a line of reference with respect to x and y axis? Because if we are talking about AD, how much is produced, it's very much in sync with the income generated in the economy. Means all the points on AS curve are equidistant from x and y axis. At any point of time, whatever is the production happening in the economy, the same level of incomes will be generated in the economy. This is as per our understanding of the circular flow of income in the economy, and that's why we say the answers from all the three methods of national income determination would be the same, because the production will give the same level of income and the incomes will give the same level of expenditure. There is no leakage and there is no injection as read in the previous chapters. That's why when we say incomes are 20, 40, 60, 80, we are beginning with zero level of income. This is zero level of income, right? So the AS also becomes exactly the same value. AS also is 0, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So in the whole chapter, wherever we are using AS would be used synonym to Y. Means AS curve and Y curve would be, how would they be? They would be simply a line going from 45 degrees from the origin and rising positively. So this is showcased as a S curve or Y curve all throughout in the chapter. And if you just try to understand, see, this is AS curve is equal to Y curve. And little before we talked about AD moves this way. Read hard and get back to me. God bless.